Steve Fleece.
Commissioner Emeritus.
Larry, I do still get calls.
Good.
They say, you know, we had an election last November. And they threw me off.
They threw me off.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the April meeting of the Grand Traverse County Ways and Means Committee to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sarah, will you call the roll, please?
Thomas?
Yep.
Rennie?
Here.
Max Bauer?
Here.
Lemcool?
Here.
Lathrop?
Here.
Inman?
Here.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am. That brings us to the approval of the minutes.
Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the March 20th, 2013 regular session of the Ways and Means Committee meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Rennie, motion by Inman, supported by Rennie to approve the March minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This brings us to the first opportunity for public comment. Sarah, will you read the rules for public comment, please?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Having heard the rules for public comment, is there anyone wishing to make public comment at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the approval of the agenda. I would like to add, under unfinished business, the approval for the natural gas contract. Last month, I told you that we'd ask for a 1-month extension, or we're going to ride 1 month. And Danny and I'd like to talk to you about the natural gas contract.
Motion to approve the agenda for this meeting with the addition of item 10.1 gas contract.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion by Inman, supported by Rennie. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. This brings us to the special order of business, Civic Center South presentation.
That's us.
That's you.
Thanks for having us. Adam Ambrosas, village manager, village of Kingsley.
Jeff Chalfant, just volunteer.
He's on the Civic Center board. Before I get started, I don't know if most of you guys know or not. I took a different position down in southwest Michigan, so I'll be leaving the village of Kingsley. It's been over 6 years, and we've done a lot, and it's definitely a great community and a nice asset to the region and to the area. So I want to thank everybody up here. We've had a great working relationship, and I hope to take that kind of collaborative mentality down to southwest Michigan and bring some of those good things. So on the topic of collaboration, we're going to talk about Civic Center South and the great ways that we've been working in the southern end of the county and making this park a success with the help of the county commission. For those of you that don't know, Civic Center South is a 40-acre facility located in the village of Kingsley. It's formerly a dump site, and in the 1980s, it was identified as an area to be turned into a regional park. And over the years, there was 12 different grant applications to the state of Michigan to fund the facility. And finally, in 2003, that was approved through an MDNR trust. And the county at the time helped pony up the money to help with the match, as did the village of Kingsley and Paradise Township, to get the process going. As it developed in 2005, everything was kind of wrapped up, and then they started to formally become a recreation authority. The Recreation Authority itself consists of the Village of Kingsley, Paradise Township, Mayfield Township, and Fife Lake Township. They all contribute money. It's its own standalone entity recognized by the state of Michigan. It's not a park that belongs to the village. It operates as its own entity. It's audited on its own, and it stands alone by Michigan law. It operates on contributions. Their operating budget's about $22,000 a year, and the county has generously given $25,000 a year for capital improvements. So that being said, we're going to give an overview of some of the things we've accomplished in the past couple of years and kind of where we want to go, and we'll start from there. There's an overview. I don't know if you guys can see how it's laid out, but currently there's 2 baseball, softball fields, 2 full-size soccer fields, 2 basketball courts, 2 sand volleyball courts, an archery range, and 2 tennis courts. Playground equipment, it also serves as the local event center. There's multiple activities. It houses the Heritage Day down there annually, and they're going to start getting music in the park going and some other activities for the southern end of the county. As you can see, ample parking and just some slides of the beautiful facility. Pavilions are rented out for graduation parties, reunions, and things of that nature. In the summertime, it's next to impossible to have it not booked, or to book it because it's so booked, and we actually built an additional pavilion, which we'll get to later.
This is something that we've done new this year, and what we really want to do was to incorporate more winter activities, and we also have a disc golf, 9-hole disc golf course, which is used extensively in the winter as well, which is really kind of amazing. I'm always amazed the fact that I'm out there putting ice together for kids to skate, and I see these folks trucking around with a backpack throwing a disc. So what we decided to do this year was we call it an ice rink, but it's really a multi-purpose rink, and my goal was to have a concrete pad that we could utilize summer, winter, fall, and as far as Heritage Days is concerned also in that time, to establish a nice clean area for people to utilize as vendors or for other activities. And as you can see here in the picture, part of the capital improvements, of course, part of the money we've used to purchase the tractor and the broom is to create a nice surface that really is quite amazing. I started out with just typical donations through some of the more generous, most generous people around, of course, Thurlby Automotive and Elmer's, and we just began with a simple liner on that basketball court and the tennis court, and we flooded it and volunteers, and it was a lot of work, and but it was utilized heavily, and we've just been able to progress nicely to this point now where we have boards up about 3 feet high, capped all the way around with a door, and there's a hut, which Adam, I believe, has a picture I'll show you in a minute. And I threw the picture of the kids out there too, because every day, we had ice this year from December, just before Christmas, up until, well, on and off, about the first part of March, and every day I would have probably 15, 20 kids, adults, a mix, and it was everything from general skating with stick puck to just figure skating and kids out running around, some of them just with boots moving a ball around, but heavily utilized, and it was really a big improvement because it was much less time on our hands to keep it up and running. But my goal, and the goal I think for the park as well, is that this summer we've already had interest for rollerblading and for skateboarding and other activities, so multi-use.
Right, and then that's in the pipeline to bring in some skateboarding equipment, to fill that need for a skate park in the area. Here's kind of a shot of the pavilion that was built. As we talked about earlier, the need for pavilion rental space. So that was constructed at the same time. You can see the warming hut, so there's a heater in there, and we also have extra sets of ice skates. So if individuals might not have ice skates, might not be able to afford ice skates, they still have the opportunity to use some. So they can go out and skate and enjoy it as well. And if they're cold, they can hop in there and warm up for a little bit, and then hit the ice afterwards. There's a breakdown of the cost of the two of them. It costs $62,155, and that doesn't even count all the volunteer time and labor and equipment that went into it. We've got a lot of great volunteers down there who put that effort in to make it happen. Earlier you saw the little picture of our own version of a Zamboni down there clearing the ice and prepping it, and those are volunteers that come out there every single morning to make sure that ice is skatable and the best surface possible. So there's a dedicated group of people down there who do this on their own time, and oftentimes with their own equipment.
Multiple times, absolutely.
Right. Here's just a little breakdown. I mean, this is one individual's time and equipment Elmer's donated to us to kind of do the prep work to make this happen.
This is actually Dave Robinson, who wouldn't take the credit, but I will give him credit, because this is the kind of volunteer that we get down there. Dave's off in the winter from Elmer's. Elmer's, of course, he goes personally to Elmer's and asks them for the equipment in donation. And as you can see a breakdown, I asked him just to give me a rough estimate for the time it took to make laser and level and do the pavilion preparation, as well as that pad and excavate. Him and I put all the drain in. I went down there and with another person, we did the laser and leveled it. And approximately, as you can see, again, that's all free, other than we paid fuel for Elmer's, but Elmer's again graciously donating that equipment for Dave to go ahead and use. And Dave is the person that really, without these volunteers, I go down at night and I help, and I have a full-time job. And fortunately, Dave's off in the winter, and I don't think he's ever off. He's always working.
Right.
He's down there 2-3 hours in the morning and at night as well, after hours putting water down.
And something that we didn't have in the last photo, we were hoping for a night shot, but we had lights installed, so there's nighttime skating, and it's used into the night hours. Here's some improvements made possible through the contributions of the county over the past few years. Improvements to the ball fields, volleyball sand, for the volleyball courts. As you know, that can be a nightmare to work on. There's been some equipment purchases to make a lot of this possible as their own standalone entity. A contributor sign, the pavilions, the ice rinks, fencing for the ball fields and for the basketball and tennis courts, which wasn't there before. So obviously the contribution has made a huge difference. None of these things would have been possible for us to do moving forward and continually improving the park if it hadn't been for the generosity of the county. Recently, a local family, Jerry Inman, donated 20 acres to the Civic Center South Authority immediately. No relation, I don't think, to Larry.
But thanks for the last name.
Yeah, immediately to the west, it's an adjacent parcel, and we're looking to add an actual golf driving range, an additional 9 holes of disc golf, 3 soccer/lacrosse fields, so they'd be kind of multifunctional. That's a huge growing sport, and we've already been contacted by the YMCA and some other organizations.
And that's what I was just going to mention. Yeah, we've had a lot of concern outside of the just the south end of the county as well.
2 additional baseball fields to bring in some adult volleyball leagues and extend the baseball season, and some additional parking. So we're really fortunate for the Inman family to have given that property to us to continue to bring quality recreation to the area. Here's a little future layout. As you can see, the additional ball fields, and then the gray area is the parking. Behind that would be the multi-purpose lacrosse soccer fields, and then to the left would be the driving range. The nearest driving range north would be probably either the Crown or Elmbrook, which is 20-25 minute drive, or Emerald Vale in Manton. So it's half hour either way to be able to hit around some golf balls. And as you guys know, I'm sure, sometimes soccer players and golf balls don't mix. So if somebody's out in the fields chipping and putting and trying to knock some balls around, it doesn't really fit in with what they're doing.
We also, though, felt that these were opportunities to bring some income as well in, and that the golf driving range would certainly be pretty inexpensive, I think, to maintain, but with the kind of interest we've had at the board recently, we feel that would be a good opportunity to increase some income as well as the lacrosse fields that we would add.
And I was hoping it'd be larger, but there's an estimated cost from our engineer, Wade Trim, and to do all the improvements we're looking at, and this does include labor costs, according to their estimates, you're looking at $600,000 in cost. And we believe that can be reduced significantly through volunteer time, volunteer equipment, and with the help of the county and their annual contribution that they've been giving. This is something that's not beyond the realm of possibility, and something that we could easily work at accomplishing in the next few years through local donations, local volunteers, and of course, capital contribution from the county and other sources. each municipality would pony up and contribute more money to make something like this happen. You know, we believe in it and see the value in it. That being said, we won't take a whole lot of your time, but we wanted to thank you guys and hope that you consider, you know, re-upping that 5-year commitment of $25,000 a year. Based on that contribution, we've been able to do a whole lot in the Grand Traverse County area, particularly in our neck of the woods. And it's not just something that's benefiting one municipality, it's benefiting everybody. You know, we've got folks that come down from Traverse City all the time for disc golf and other things down there, so it's not something that's isolated. But we just want to say thank you, and it's something we would not have and would not be where we're at if it had not been for the generosity of the county board. So
Thank you.
And Larry, I think, has some comments.
Good evening. Feels a little funny sitting here instead of there. But anyway, you know, the county appropriates a lot of money to a lot of different organizations. And sometimes it's fairly measurable, sometimes it's not. But I think it was in 2009 or 10, the Board of Commissioners paid a field visit down there one morning, and were really impressed with what they saw. And I would like to see this board do that this spring if we ever get rid of the snow, and see actually where the money that this board's appropriated in the last 5 years, where it's went. And previous to that time, the county had appropriated actually $100,000 when they started it. I think it's a very worthwhile appropriation, and I would really hope that the board will continue that practice like they have in the past. And if I were still a member of the Board of Commissioners, I would absolutely vote for it. And I'm thanking you in advance for your support of that. Thank you.
Larry?
I'm reviewing your proposed preliminary engineering estimates and those things that you want to include, I guess, in your overall master plan for the additional property that you're acquiring. Do you have I guess 2 questions. One is, do you have a proposed timeline for trying to complete some of this? And do you have secondary or other sources of revenue that you're planning on going out and trying to acquire, like foundation money, Rotary money, tribal grants? I don't know if the authority would consider some kind of taxation amount on the governing townships. I don't know. That's probably not a great sell. But do you have like a plan? I know you're leaving, and you probably have some thoughts on this, but probably your predecessor probably would be taking over that. But you have some thoughts on that?
Sure. To answer most of those questions, yes. I mean, of course, foundation money and everything else is on the radar. Oftentimes, to qualify for those, we need capital to leverage. So if we know for a fact that we have $25,000 a year coming in, we can put down for that grant that, say it's $100,000, and we have $25,000 to leverage as our match. It helps with the scoring process. So, I mean, to know that that's a fact that we have that capital coming in is a help for the application process, whether it be the DNR or most any other granting organizations. I know, even MEDC has made some grant funds available for park improvements because that kind of place-making idea that, creating this area where people can come and congregate and recreate and, have those quality of life benefits, they've freed up some money for things of that nature too. The taxation topic, by law, all the entities would have to pass and approve the tax, which we don't see happening, and that's not something we would even want to go down. But to answer, yes, most of those.
Time span for, is this a 10-year plan, 20-year plan?
Well, hopefully less than that. A lot of it, once we get the clearing done, hopefully that's done through, volunteer time, and, the village has quite a bit of equipment, and the Bach family has been generous to us in the original layout. I know Bill Klaus donated some time out there, as well as Elmer's in clearing it and leveling the original. And we're hoping to kind of get that going again and, be able to make steps towards it. But I think it's something, maybe 3 to 7 years, we can see some of it going on, maybe not all of it, maybe the paving and some things would come later on as those are higher cost items, but you can still get a base down and park on it. And the fields themselves are a lot of earthworks. So if we can get a lot of that donated, it's really not as far of a dream as you think. When you see that $600,000 figure, it kind of scares you. But, if you take into a lot of account the earthwork and some things we can get donated, it really becomes something that's actually tangible.
Okay.
Dick?
First, I want to tell you, I wish I'd have known that you were putting that slab in for the rink, because many, many years ago, just after they invented refrigeration, I worked at a rink that was on a tennis court, and they laid the pipes down every year, which, is kind of a pain in the neck. It would have been great if you could have buried the pipes, even though if you couldn't afford the refrigeration.
Trust me, I looked into it, I'd love to have done it, but I think the cost was,
Well, I know, but anyway,
We should have came back and
I
asked.
love your thinking, though, trust me.
refresh my memory, Dean, did we budget this year?
There is nothing in your 2013 budget at this time for this.
Can you find it?
I don't know if I should answer that without letting Dave go with that first. I mean, what we had done
Oh, we have contingency.
we've been a little bit different in how we've approached this. It has not been part of the budget that the board has approved. And perhaps one of the things to do would be to, include it in the request that we have from all of the departments, so it can be evaluated, in terms of all of the other items and departments and the courts that the county funds, along with our own parks and capital needs. But you historically, at least for the last 3 years, looked at this after you closed your year, and last year the appropriation came out of your contingency. But it has not been built into the budget at this time, and you historically have a contingency in your general fund, and that's where you took the funds last year.
Herb?
I totally support what's going down, and I've never voted for this appropriation, mainly because I feel that it should go through our Parks and Recreation budget. You should be vetting it through them. But also, I have a problem coming in the middle of the year and asking for an appropriation. We've already done a Maple Bay Park appropriation out of our contingency fund that we're trying to put money into that, which is an $80,000 hit. Also, I understand that you have a DDA down there and that the village is not part of. And I'm just wishing that you could probably go after the DDA to make that happen and do that.
That's incorrect. The DDA, the DDA is in the downtown of the village.
Okay.
I mean, so it was
So
driven by the village.
there's
to
some
do so.
organization that's not part of you? That's the rumor that I hear.
I don't,
Okay.
no, that's inaccurate. And the DDA couldn't contribute to it anyway. By law, it's outside of the DDA district, and they couldn't contribute to something like that anyway.
So, but they could expand the district to be able to include that. But I just, personally, I just have I love supporting what you guys are doing. I just think that it should go through our Parks and Recreation, should be put through that, and go through the proper channels of trying to get the appropriation, put it in our decision-making when we start setting our budget, and our budgets are go through and starting in June and go through September, October, and then we should make that decision at that time as to whether or not their appropriation should be made. It shouldn't be made tonight.
I would move that we find a way to find their 25,000 for this year and then operate the way Herb says next year.
I'll support that.
Further discussion?
Well, I guess I could just.
Well, maybe I'll do mine first.
All right, you can
if
do
that's
yours
all
first.
right. Okay.
You're the chair.
I absolutely commend Civic Center South and their organization. I think they've done some amazing things down there. In the close to 10 years that we've been dealing with this, I've never supported it one time. And I will not support it tonight. These are recreational dollars. Recreational dollars should go through the county's Parks and Recreation Commission, through the county's Parks and Recreation Director, and come to this board as a request for a budget. It should not come from a quasi-governmental organization after our budget is all drawn. It should never, this is certainly not the way it should be done. And, I've opposed it, Jenny Holtz would like to beat me over the head more than once. But the fact is that these are recreational dollars. The county budgets recreational budget every year. These dollars should come through the county's Parks and Recreation Commission and be recommended, or a portion, whatever, by the county's Parks and Recreation Director. We have a professional Parks Director, and any expenditures for recreational money should come through that department. I believe that, I always have believed that it's wrong for commissioners to come in and ask to make appropriations from contingency or whatever to any organization that hasn't went through the budget process. And not one time from the very beginning has this ever been discussed as part of the budget process. It's never went before the Parks and Recreation Commission, to the best of my knowledge. It's always come directly to the county board by commissioners. Chris?
I'll change that for you this year for next year's budget.
Well, that's fine, but the fact is, it's recreational money. Recreational money should come through the Parks and Recreation Commission, through the Parks Director, and be requested at the time that we're approving our annual budget. Larry?
Well, I certainly see both viewpoints, and I think there's one point that you've always adamantly said that you just sort of left off. I believe it was your opinion that, contributing money to other township parks, where we draw the line when other townships want to come in to have their own park systems and we're not contributing to their parks. So that's a touchy issue, but on the other end, having represented South County for 10 years, there is a sense that that the focus and the distribution of county money is more towards the population levels closer to town and adjacent around town, and South County they feel, at least they feel, that they're thinned out in terms of the attention and the amount of contributions that we're helping or assisting them with in South County. But I'm not here to debate that here tonight. We have a $1 million hole that we have not figured out yet for next year, for the 014 budget. We have some things that we need to have our administrator consider, which he has some ideas of perhaps some ways to share those things up, but we have not really gone through that process. And we have to recognize we're a 2-year term board, and sometimes I feel not overly, I don't know what the right word is, but appropriate for extending an obligation for future boards made by this board. But that's part of our business when we bond out new buildings and everything else. So I guess you can take that argument one side to another. But I don't have a particular problem if we think if we can identify the funds. The motion, I believe, is if we can identify the funds for this year in this year's 013 budget, that we would make an allocation for this year. And then I think it would be incumbent upon us to take a second look at the request coming in for next year for that appropriation, once we go through the 014 budget process and we figure out if we can fill this $1 million hole or we got to lay a bunch of people off. So there is that issue. So I would support, I guess the motion on the floor is to look at a way to fund it this year for $25,000, and then we would have to come back, as Dick said, when we go through the 014 budget to see if it can fit at that point. So I guess I'm with that.
Larry, I've heard for 10 years, I've been hearing about how the Parks and Recreation people only deal with money around the core part of the community. They don't talk about South County. South County has never asked. Not one time has this Civic Center South ever went before the Parks and Recreation Commission. It has always been
That's
brought
not
by
true.
commissioners directly to the Board of Commissioners for their funding.
That's not true.
Well, If it is, it was a very small
Many,
thing.
many years ago, but that's not true.
But they have never come through the budget process, through Parks and Rec. They've always had commissioners bring it directly to the Board of Commissioners. You know, we went through a huge fight a year and a half, 2 years ago with the Parks and Recreation Board, because the Parks Board makes decisions, and then the Board of Commissioners overturns those decisions and does something different. If we're going to have the Board of Commissioners make these kind of decisions, then we might as well get rid of the Parks and Recreation Board. If you're going to charge them and give them responsibility to take care of things, then at least ask their opinion before you start spending taxpayer money.
I guess the response to that is that I would expect them to make the governing decisions regarding the parks that we own and operate. And this is a park system that we don't govern and operate, and this would be just considered an outside capital appropriation for whatever we do on outside sourcing, so outside funding, so, and it should be considered on an annual basis.
You know, we're talking about a 40 and a potential 60-acre park here. Next week, when the Board of Commissioners meet, Karen Rose is coming from Long Lake Township. She's going to tell you about hundreds and hundreds of acres that Long Lake Township has acquired for parks land and for natural preservation land. That land includes the Bullhead Lake quiet area. It includes the former Boy Scout property on Cedar Lake. It includes the South Long Lake Forest area that extends clear over to Bass Lake. And most recently, I think it's 3,600 acres, including frontage on North Long Lake, that they got that was the Timbers Girl Scout camp.
Wow.
You know, and they aren't here asking for $25,000 a year. And they've never one time, well, I take that back. One time, they asked us to pay 50% of the cost of a set of soccer goals. And that was back in, probably in the early 80s, you know. But the fact is, you know, we talk about this, and, you know, I absolutely commend Civic Center South, but I am terribly opposed to the idea that we handle this park different than we handle all of the other parkland that the townships own, and the villages own, and the city owns. You know, we can talk about the stuff that Garfield Township owns, and, you know, the Silver Lake Park, Medallion
And
Park,
Green Lake.
you know, the Nature Education Reserve, all of which, you know, we don't, you know, Green Lake, last week I was at their meeting, and they're talking about what it's going to cost them this year, how much the price is going up for them to get just their ball diamonds and soccer fields mowed and taken care of. You know, and it's just, to me, this appropriation is inappropriate in that it doesn't come through the county's Park and Recreation Committee. Charlie.
This park serves 3 townships and a village. It's not a township park. It's an authority separate from. It's not like every
Well, as far as
township
I'm
would
concerned,
come
that
in.
makes it worse.
I don't think it makes it worse. I think it makes it a different situation. Now, granted, every township has parks and has plans, but I think over the years, and I think most people that at least live down there like I do, agree, the south end of this county has been overlooked, period. There's 30-some parks around Hammond Road and north. There is not a county park in the south end of the county. These people took it upon themselves to put this together, and they've done a hell of a job down there. And I think this is a very inexpensive way to show those people that they matter. Going forward, I agree with Larry and Dicky. Maybe we look at it differently going forward, I agree. But I look at Maple Bay, you bring that up. $9–10 million to get it. We're putting $450,000 in it to put a couple of pavilions up and some parking. It will not even be used all year round. We've got our parks director, Jason Jones, saying that they would like to do something in the south end of the county. I think this solves the problem now, and I think it's a very inexpensive way to do it. Going forward, I agree with you. We should formalize this and make these requests through the parks or something like that. I could live with that, as Larry suggested. But I think we should do something for these folks this year, and then going forward, present it in a fashion that you would be happy with. I have no problem with that.
Larry?
Well, I don't know if this is a true statement or not, but it's just my belief by the number of years that I've been on this board that when Grand Traverse County assumed the ownership of the Civic Center, here in Traverse City, within the city limits, that there was some thought about, at the Parks and Rec level or in an administration in the county commission level, that based on the continued growth of the county during that period of time, that we should really have 2 civic centers, one in Traverse City and one south. But we didn't have the operating money to do both. So I believe the initiative was tossed back to the local units of government to come up with a plan of how they might be able to come together with a South Civic Center for the county. And I think there was some communication to the fact that we would be able to help them out. We don't want to take ownership, and we can't afford the operating costs. What we can do from time to time is give you some capital improvements. So actually, the public, not 3 townships, would be served by 2 civic centers, one south and one in Traverse City. And that was the premise behind giving them some capital appropriation and not assuming the ownership and not paying for the operating fees, which they agreed to do. So it was like a partnership. So, we had completed that agreement at the last budget cycle. I guess nobody would envision that they would have acquired all this additional acreage. So, I'd like to take just a leap of faith, based on, the premise that was there a number of years ago, that, we are serving the citizens of South County, and it's just not a 3-township park, just like the Civic Center is serving the public within the county, within the whole county and the city. So my preference is if the budget is doing better than what we expect and revenues are up, and if we can find a spot for it, I don't have a problem making the appropriation as a good faith effort. But I think moving forward, it ought to be part of a regular budget process, whether it goes through Parks and Rec or not. But Parks and Rec, I think, is just going to take the opinion. It's not our parks. They're going to flip it right back to us. That's just my assumption. But I'd like to take it on a year-by-year basis, based on the budget and what we're facing every year, and make a determination whether we can do it or not.
Additional comments?
What's the motion?
Motion's for, I think the motion is if we can identify the money in this year's budget for $25,000, it would be brought back to the board for final approval. And then other requests would have to be forwarded with our regular budget process.
So is it my understanding your proposal is to spend money out of the contingency with 8 months of our budget year still remaining?
I think he's going to come back with it. I think the motion was to direct staff to see if we can come up with it.
Dean's going to look for it.
Dave, do you have a comment?
No.
Chicken.
You have contingency funds, and you can spend that on just about whatever you want. We have to replenish contingency every year, of course. You have a $100,000 contingency. If you spend $25,000 of it on one thing or another, you've got to put $25,000 back from somewhere. And you're going to have to raise revenue. And, we are confident that this year, the way the equalization report just came out, that we're going to see some increase, but we don't know, what the rest of the budget looks like yet. This is a capital expense. Like I said, it's, I've always told board members that capital expenses, if you're going to pull something, out of the blue in the middle of the budget year and say we need to spend additional money that we don't have budgeted, I'd rather it be a capital expenditure than a ongoing operational expenditure.
Herb?
Yeah, Dean, didn't we take $40,000 for the Maple Bay out of our contingency fund?
No, the way will work, depending on, if we're successful in that application, that will have to be built into a subsequent year's budget. I mean, we were anticipating that would not hit 2013, period.
See, my concern is that number one issue that we had when we found out during our strategic planning was technology. We don't have the money in our technology budget to be able to do what we need to do. And if I was going to put a priority, I sure would be looking at technology before I started looking at trying to fund any other organization, no matter who or where it is. we need to take care of our people and ourselves first.
Okay, sir, do you want to read, does anybody need the motion read, or do we all understand the motion?
Could you say it again, please?
If you would, please. You can do it. I'm confident.
It was moved by Thomas, second by Max Bauer, to recommend staff to find $25,000 to appropriate to Civic Center South, and then for future years to go through the budget process.
Okay. You've heard the motion. Roll call, please.
Rennie?
Yes.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
No.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes?
Thomas?
Yep.
Wheelock?
No. Okay, motion carries. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman?
Now they have to find the money.
I'd like to apologize. When I came up to the table, I didn't identify myself for your viewing audience. So I'm Larry Fleece, and I'd like to thank the board for the appropriation for Civic Center South. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your time, and I think you guys will get the invite to the open house. It's next Friday, 4 to 7. We're going to, so hopefully we see some of you guys there.
And
Thank you.
good luck
Thanks,
to
Adam.
you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure
Thanks,
we'll-
Adam,
Thank
very
you for
much.
your service to our community.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. That brings us to our consent calendar.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will automatically be respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, received and filed, or approval is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. 1, 2013 county health rankings. B, approvals. 1, fiscal year 2012-2013 Michigan Department of Community Health Comprehensive Planning, Budgeting, and Contracting Agreement Amendment Number 4. 2, fiscal year 2010 Emergency Management Preparedness Grant additional funding. 3, fiscal year 2011 Emergency Management Preparedness Grant additional funding. 4, 2013 hauler license.
Having heard the consent calendar, is there anyone in the audience wishing to have any item removed? Anyone on the board wishing to have an item pulled? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Motion by Lathrop, supported by Max Bauer. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Max Bauer?
Yes.
Lemkool?
Yes.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Inman?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yep.
Rennie?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am. We have no items pulled from the consent calendar, so that brings us to department action items. The first would be Facilities Department.
Hello, I'm Danny Brown, the Facilities Director, and tonight I got a couple items here. The first one is the roof for this building. It needs it desperately. I was able to get some voluntary alternates when this bid went out from Bluxom Roofing, and you'll see a huge difference, big swing in cost on this roof. So I originally had it bid to take the total roof off and actually start over with it. But in talking to Bluxom Roofing, who's been in this business for 75 years, they said that's crazy. You're just adding that cost to it. So we went back, discussed another method of putting this roof on, and you can see the difference between $112,970 and even the lowest bidder, which was $148,844. So my recommendation, I feel real confident in this roof, and there is two places that this very type of roof is. One is on Munson Medical Center, and the other one's on one of the hotels down on Munson Avenue. I can't remember the name of it right now. And one of them is 11 years old, and another one's 12 years old. And Bluxom has both of those roofs guaranteed for 15 years, like they'll guarantee this one. And they've never had a callback. So I would recommend using Bluxom Roofing and using the voluntary alternate of $112,970.
I guess I have a question.
I have a motion by Lynn Cool. Do I have support?
Sure.
Motion is supported by Thomas. Further discussion. Larry?
Clarification, if you could.
Sure.
It sounded like when you made your presentation that you went out for bid for certain specs, and 4 of them came in with bids,
Correct.
and then you got a call and you talked to Blacksum, and they said, no, you shouldn't do the roof based on that criteria that you sent out. You should do it a different way.
No, they actually had the voluntary alternates in their bid packet.
What is a voluntary alternate?
Something different.
Okay, now, the question I have is, wouldn't it be prudent if there is a different bid that's being recommended, or different specs?
Okay.
Shouldn't the rest of them have the ability to bid on that different set of specs? To make a playing field fair?
Well,
Or don't they do those?
the Sika Sarnafil is the only one that handles this kind of a roof system.
Who?
Sika Sarnafil,
Bloxham Roofing is their distributor.
yes.
So, I just want to make sure that these other roofing companies come back and go, well, wait a minute here, you guys have preliminary approved something that we never saw or did not have a chance to bid on because you changed the specs.
No.
You're looking at a different spec.
No, what happens with, when you send out a bid and then a vendor comes in and says, I have a different way of doing that.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you, I can do this for a lot less money if I do this, this, and this.
Okay.
Instead of the way you spec'd it.
All right.
You don't usually rebid it when you do that. It's
Alright.
usually, wow, that's really innovative, or that's that's your product, and it works that way, and so I save a lot of money. That's a great thing. If it was that your specs were wrong or not saying what you expected, we want to cover our roof, that, everybody has the same opportunity to respond with an alternate.
So was the bid generic enough where they could just do any system they wanted and
No.
then submit the bid? Or was it specific?
It was specific, and
Seems to me if it was specific, then all of them should be able to bid on what we want to do.
I think if I could, maybe.
Or
What
unless I'm missing
generally will
something.
happen in these kind of a bids is you will set it forth specifications, but then each contractor has the opportunity to bid you an alternate. And what happened here is, as I understand it, or what I read anyway, is that the contractor, who in this particular case happens to be Bloxham Roofing, determined that, the insulation that is already existing on that roof is not bad. So why don't we take off the rock ballast, take off the top membrane, install another layer of insulation to get you at an additional R level, and the new membrane, which is what they did. And then this Sarnafil system allows for, I call it a turbo vent, but it truly isn't. It's just a venting that allows the insulation from underneath to evaporate, if you will, because there's always going to be moisture and condensation in the insulation because of the membrane. And what this does is it gives it an opportunity for that material to breathe. And it's a pretty impressive system when you see how it looks. I had the material. I don't have the power vents on my building, but I had this same material installed when they redid our roof after our fire. And we've absolutely a big fan of the fact that everything's dry. But the fact that the original specifications included taking off all of the insulation that was existing. Well, unless there's something wrong with the insulation that's there, there's probably no advantage to paying somebody to take it off and paying disposal costs to get rid of it. Just simply laying an additional smooth layer of insulation over the top, which polystyrene, I think it was, wasn't it?
It is.
Polystyrene insulation is being installed. And the other thing that's nice is they've included in this the fact that they're going to slope this roof, which will help us with our roof drains and our drainage, which seems to be a problem for us in a couple areas, like the third floor hallway that drips,
So I guess the follow-up question I have now is, in the bid, does the bid allow, in writing, for a company to submit an alternate bid? An alternate proposal?
It's pretty common practice, actually, that people, if they've got a different idea than what you expect, they will use a voluntary alternate, or put it in their bid packet.
So that's customary.
Well, not everybody does it, but a lot of folks do.
I just don't want to have a situation.
No, I
where
understand.
We've got some, we make a decision or a preliminary decision tonight, and these other companies come and go, well, wait a minute,
No, I understand
we got a
that.
whole new deal, and we want an opportunity to bid on this whole
I
new deal.
thoroughly thought that through, just for that reason, because I didn't want to get into that kind of a situation, actually. Charlie?
Yes, did the other firms submit an alternative bid?
No,
None of them did.
none.
Are all these membrane roofs, all these manufacturers?
Yes.
It just seems, as Larry said, you kind of jumped to blocks them with their alternative bid.
Well,
without
not only-
maybe passing that along to the other potential candidates here.
Well, here's what would happen. If I spec the roof that they're intended to put on this building, there would be no other bidders. Because Seika Sarnafil, that's their system.
Correct.
I can rebid it if that's where we're going.
I guess my point is, are these other manufacturers, do they have a membrane that's equivalent to the Silca
Not that I know of.
that you're, okay.
I think they have a membrane that's similar, but they don't have the system
The
with the
technology.
venting technology.
Would we have been better than going to vendors that had this same system and get quotes from them?
There isn't anybody.
There
else.
isn't
There's
anyone
nobody?
else.
No, they have this, they're the vendor for this territory.
Okay.
How long has this roof been on?
18 years.
18 years. Okay. You know, one thing I never want to see is a roof fail. And I commend you for wanting to come in and say, let's get it fixed.
Well, we
I
got to
was
get it
involved
fixed.
with another building where they delayed it by 2 or 3 years and ended up having to completely redo the interior of the building because they found out they had asbestos on the beams. Those asbestos all had to be removed. We fought for almost a whole winter running tubs and tubes into buckets, trying to keep the water out of the rest of the building. Do it now before we have that failure. So,
Yeah, we really need to get that done.
yeah.
This is in our budget already, right?
Yes,
Actually, it's saving us money,
yes,
because he's going to do something else with the money then.
yes,
Safe bet.
if I could.
I don't want to make this sound like a conflict, but I've got a roof, the old Trocal roof, which is about the same membrane,
About the same, yeah.
and it's been on for almost 20 years.
Yeah, that was a state-of-the-art thing on flat roofs. Well, just one final comment if I could. I'm willing to go with the staff recommendation tonight because it'll have to be approved at the board meeting. But if these other companies feel differently, that, that they weren't given the opportunity to bid fairly, then we're placing them on notice via this meeting that if they do, then they need to come in by the board meeting and make their case.
Yeah,
Dick?
Oh, I was,
Okay.
they're all, price-wise, they're all close to the same, except the one that doesn't warranty their work. Or their material.
well, they didn't fill it out. Let's put it that way.
So-
There is a place in the bid document that they have to check off and explain how that warranty works, how many years, and if it's labor and material both, or whatever. And they did that, I mean, so that's why we put a no there.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carried.
The next item, thank you, Paul. The next item is for information about the clock tower. It's a little update on that. I am getting several calls from people in the neighborhood. I hadn't had one that's been negative. So I've been telling them, please put it in an email form send it to me so I have a record of it. So I got me a file right here with about a half a dozen people so far. And it seems to me I'm getting about 3 or 4 calls a week, so just wanted to give you that update. And then next week, we'll be talking about the way to handle the cash, right?
Well, I've got an agenda item in the packet here that asks for the creation of a trust and agency account to accept donations up to $10,000 for the purposes of purchasing a new mechanism for the chimes for the clock tower, and then if, after we purchase that, if there's any remaining money in the trust and agency account, that it'd be used for maintenance of the clock, and, you know, generally could only be used for the clock. And then we anticipate that we will ask the public to come in and speak to the board if they have any issues next week, and then this would be adopted officially at next week's meeting to establish the trust and agency account and allow the treasurer to begin taking donations to allow the chimes to be purchased.
Okay, thank you.
You know, one thing that, you know, I think I mentioned it, fiscal resources. You know, one thing we have to remember about the clock on the historic courthouse, the hands, the numbers, and the lines are all wood. You
Yes,
know,
they are.
That's not brass, it's not cast iron. Those are wooden hands up there on that clock, you know. They've held up pretty well. You know, I'm not sure how good they look if you actually get up there close to it, but,
Not good.
you know, from where they are, I'm guessing Danny's got a different opinion of what
Oh,
they
yeah,
look like than I do.
definitely.
But the fact is the clock does need to have maintenance that we've never been able to do. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to do it.
I bid it out, just so you know for information, about 4 years ago, and I think the number was $50,000 to have somebody come in and go through that whole clock. It loses about 5 minutes. We wind it every 4 days, and it loses about 4 minutes to 5 every time we wind it. So what's going to happen is if I put this ringer, it's an arm that hits the bell, I'm going to have to keep adjusting that thing so that it's accurate. You see my point? It's going to be, somebody's going to say, oh, well, it's 5 o'clock. Well, it isn't. It's 5 minutes to 5.
Ringer's going to be accurate, but the clock won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'll figure it out, though.
It'd take a long pole to move those arms.
Yeah, you know, we have to remember, this is an old clock that we manually wind. It's nothing electronic.
Sometimes, Danny,
all
I feel
mechanical.
sorry for you.
Okay, the last item I have,
We need to make a motion.
Oh, I'm
to
sorry.
start public hearing.
Do we have a motion authorizing the creation of the trust and agency account and to hold a public hearing on the April 24th
I'll make
Board
that
of
motion.
Commissioners meeting? Motion by Rennie, supported by Lathrop. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Okay.
okay, thank you on that. And then the last item is the price of natural gas. This is so volatile right now, it's not even funny. We talked to our supplier, that's IGS, on yesterday, and I talked to him again today. It's went up since, we talked to him yesterday about 3 o'clock. It was at .459. Today, this morning it went up 5 cents, and this afternoon it went up 4 more, for a total of 9 cents. There's a 9 cents raise today. They have an adjustment, it's called, in the futures market for natural gas, and they do it on the 3rd Thursday of every month. Now, this is for gas that'll be purchased for June. And that market actually sets the tone of what they're going to sell this gas at. And that happens to be tomorrow. So hopefully we can get the same number tomorrow, because what they're thinking is that it's went up so much that we think it's going to peak out and the price is going to drop. Not by much, but enough that we can get that same .459 number.
Well, but we do have a guarantee that it will not, that we will get the 459 number.
Right.
You know, that it will not exceed that. You know, we've talked about this a little bit before. You know, and Danny and I have worked on this a lot, but in the last 6 years, we've taken the price of natural gas that the community pays for from about 79 cents down to 39.9 last year, which was really nice. And even at the 459, we are still about 40% lower than we were in 2011. So, you know, we're still lower than we've been. You know, we got a really big deal in 2012.
Right.
Which, you know, we were very excited about. But I'm just, you know, and maybe I get the blame for this. And first week in February, they offered us 414.
Yes, they did.
And, you know, historically, you know, Danny's been chewing on me about signing, and I've always said, well, let's wait another week. Over the last 5 years, we've saved a nickel with that extra week every time.
Right.
And, you know, they came to us in February with 414. We chose not to take it. You know, we were at 439 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
And at that point, we were at 339, but that was not on a 12-month contract.
That was on a 1 month.
That was 1 month at a time. At that point, we were, I didn't bring my notes as to what the 12-month contract is. The number this week is, or on Tuesday, was 459 for a 1-year contract, 453 for a 2-year contract. That's not enough savings to justify tying you into a contract for 2 years.
Right.
Because there is absolutely, positively no logical reason the price of natural gas is this high.
Except for the weather.
There's nothing. There is so much surplus gas in the system, there's no reason that natural gas costs are this high. But the fact that the winter is held on, the spring is held on, there's still, you know, big weather out west. Their people are still anticipating that they're going to sell heating fuel, and so the price is staying up. And there, you know, even the experts that have tracked natural gas for years say there is no reason that gas is this high. But, you know, I think Danny and I agree that for the county, we need to lock this number. We cannot do the variable thing. You know, we're seeing projections, or I've seen projections that shows in November of 2013, natural gas will be $7 100 or $7 1,000. We don't want to get there. We absolutely don't want to get there. So we need to lock this thing down. You know, everything that I'm seeing is October, November, they're saying 670 to 720 in, you know, 1,000. You know, that's an absurd number. You know, I hope it never happens. But we are, at the 459 number, we are still 20 cents under the current DTE rate.
That's correct.
So, you know, I wish I could tell you that we get, you know, I told Jacob, and who's the gentleman we deal with at IGS, in February, when he got the number below the 40 cents below that we were currently paying, call me, but I didn't hear from him for about 3 weeks, and that made me real nervous. But, you know, Danny and I have worked on this, and, you know, between, you know, basically with the new health department building, even with all of the changes we made, I'm anticipating that Grand Traverse County is probably going to use 23 million feet this year.
Probably.
You know,
It's a big
so
building.
when you start talking about, you know, 20 cents a hundred, it makes a lot of difference when you're spending when you're buying 23 million feet.
How long can we
Big
lock it
numbers.
in for, Sonny?
1 year. Well, actually, it won't be 1 year. It'll run through March 31st of 2014.
You want
Will
that
be the
motion?
contract we'll sign right now. Because the contracts always come up at the 1st of April. And, you know, we got a 1 month extension, or we signed 1 month.
So are you good with that?
Last month, so.
You want a motion now and have it ratified?
What I would recommend, or what I would ask, I guess, and, you know, Danny can tell me if it's different, I would ask that we authorize the facilities director to sign a natural gas contract not to exceed $4.59 a hundred.
Is that your motion?
I can't make the motion.
We can't, oh, all right. I'll make that motion.
Support.
Motion by Layford, supported by Thomas. Any further comments,
Can this
questions?
be the full ratification of the board so we can just get it done, or do you want to wait till another week?
When, he's gonna have to sign this contract when it comes, period. You know, he's not going to have the option to bring it to us a week from now. You know, so I would ask that, you know, we give him authorization to sign this contract, period. Okay. Danny, you have anything you want to add?
So we need to clarify it's a full ratification of the board.
This is a ratification vote.
All right, so it won't be on the consent calendar. All right, okay.
David, do you have any comments in this regard?
No, I think you're proceeding the way you should.
You know, I really wanted to tell you we were at 40 cents. I
Yeah.
really did.
You know,
but-
Sure.
The market is volatile right now.
Oh.
There's some investors trying to put their money in safe places, and natural gas is a nice, safe place to put it, which is probably affecting the price right now, but I don't think we ought to wait.
I think you're right.
It's more likely it'll go up than down.
I'm afraid you're right at this point, you know.
Well, hopefully it'll peak tomorrow. We'll see.
Okay, any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Danny.
Danny, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
We're responsible for Medley Park, and your crew takes
Medalley?
care of it? Medalley Park?
Yeah.
Vince's Jewelries would like to have a discussion with you about upgrading the quality of the park, and he would like to help cost share or do some work with you. So
good.
could you get in touch with him?
Sure.
Talk to him about what he might like to see and what he can do and how we can work together?
Okay.
Figure out a way to trap the geese out of there would be the biggest thing you could
That's
do.
a mess.
Yeah. So if you could talk to him at Vince at Vince's Jewelry.
Yeah, we know him.
Okay.
He's talked to us a lot.
Well, but I talked to him today, and he said he'd like to see if we could upgrade that
We'll get with
park.
him. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the Health Department. Wendy and Jerry have all the good news. I brought Tom to help.
All right, Wendy Truth, Health Officer at Grand Traverse County Health Department. We're bringing to you tonight, we're seeking approval to proceed with purchase of an agreement with Mitchell and McCormick to implement our electronic health record. We've submitted a summary of the timeline. We've already been through the first phase, which is organization and discovery, and we're now proceeding and are hoping to proceed into phase 2, which is the construction.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Lemkool, supported by Lathrop. Further discussion?
I sat on the original committee when we selected this software, and it's nice to see that we haven't had to change horses in the middle of the stream.
I agree.
Jerry, I'm assuming that you've identified the funding in your budget for this, correct?
We have, it's actually spelled out, I think, towards, it's on page 51. But it's a combination of funds. We're receiving some Medicaid incentive funds as a result of employing several nurse practitioners and also having a contract with Dr. Collins. That, along with, we received some additional funding for an immunization best practice project this year that needs to be spent by the end of June, so we're going to use some of that funding to fund this as well. And then with some of the increased funding that we had used had received for the adolescent clinics, which is where we're going to do the initial implementation. So from those three sources, this will be fully paid for.
Well, that was the other point that I was going to, if I read this correctly, the initial implementation of this program will happen at the two youth clinics, the one at TBA ISD and the one at K-Town in Kingsley.
Correct.
You know, the county and the county health department's been out front in dealing with youth health in this organization, you know, in these two facilities, and I think we forget to recognize, you know, the leadership that we've provided in the care that we've been able to provide these kids. You know, I know that a lot of things changed from the initial discussions. I remember when we first started talking about the facility at TBA, and then once we got it open, all of a sudden we were dealing with pregnancies and prenatal care and infant care, which we had never even considered when we talked about a youth health facility. You know, we hadn't even talked about those as, you know, at least in any of the discussions that I've been involved in, we hadn't had it, but all of a sudden, you know, we've got a youth health care center, and these are issues we have to take care of. And we did. We took care of them, and we do a great job with it.
One of the biggest things they've also been dealing with are behavioral health, mental health issues. And we were approved, our nurse practitioners were the first nurse practitioners approved to be part of the University of Michigan. It's kind of a reach-out program where they can consult with specialists through the University of Michigan hospitals. They're not individual case consultations, but they're able to have discussions with them about some of the medications and making sure a lot of them have, you know, they're complicated, so they're able to get some good direction that way. Previously, it had only been open to physicians, but they did open it up to us, so.
Any further discussion, any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried.
You didn't need that to be immediate. You can wait till next Wednesday.
Jerry's going to issue a purchase order. Okay, Cherryland Humane Society.
We have a couple of guests in the audience.
Okay.
And I don't know if they want to come up and say anything, but this is the long-awaited agreement with the Cherryland Humane Society for the boarding of animals that have been impounded by the county. I think you all have been around long enough, around this subject matter long enough, so I don't have to explain the whole thing to you. The short version is that the Humane Society is going to be doing the animal shelter functions for us. It will allow for our county officers to be on the road anywhere from 3 to 5 hours per day, depending on the day. It, of course, allows us to close the shelter and use it for storage or whatever we want for a while. I don't think we have any plans to do anything with the shelter at the present time. We're just going to, you know, the Humane Society and the county are both going to take a look at this contract and see how it works. The costs in the contract are based upon historical averages, and we pretty much are, it's not a break even for the county. We think probably our cost is going to be about $5,000 to $10,000 more than it currently is. But you're going to get more officers on the road as a result of that. If there are less, if there are less dogs impounded, we'll probably pay somewhere around $5,000 to $10,000 more, probably $5,000 or less more. If there are more than that, the cost is $10 per day above the maximums that we have inside the contract. So, as you recall, we were talking about $12 per day, so that was one of our negotiating points. Then our cost would be higher, but not significantly so. So we think it's worth a try, and if Dr. Burke or Mr. Cherry would like to come up and say anything, said they have
Dr. Burke was shaking his head no.
in the back. They've been patiently waiting in the back. I don't know if they have anything to say or not.
I think you did a very good job of summarizing everything.
Thank you.
Dan?
I have a question for David. So this means that you won't have to find the keys and go attend to the dog?
That's correct, and they'll actually be open on Saturdays from 11 to 3, which is something that we've never had before.
Well, as a budget item, that's better, because think about what it costs to have you go take care of the dogs versus, yeah, this is going to save us money.
He doesn't get paid more.
We didn't tell you about that part of your contract.
That was free.
All right.
Dick?
Dave, would we break even if we had cat licenses?
We'd be raking in money hand over fist.
We could pay for Civic Center South.
You already got that with the roof.
I don't even want to wager a
Sonny in
guess
the
how many
coronary
times
heart
I've heard
attack.
Dick suggest cat licenses in the 16 years I've sat in this chair. So,
Hey, there's a good reason for it. My neighbor almost lost his
the
hand
one
from a
question
cat.
that I had in 1.21, it talks about notice to the county in case of intake from the public. I'm still concerned that, you know, people can bring animals in and drop them off at the Humane Society and say, well, this is a stray I picked up, the county's going to pay the bill. You know, and I'm assuming that, you know, we're all going to do due diligence to try to determine that it's not actually, you know, their dog or their neighbor's dog that they just brought down here and you know, I just have some concern about the fact that the general public can bring in a dog and drop it off and say, the county's responsible for the bill.
Well, they could, I mean, but the member of the public wouldn't know the difference. I mean, the question at intake will be, where'd this dog come from? Well, I found it running around on the street and decided to bring it in.
It's fine, don't worry.
It's pretty much a stray. If they say, I just can't take care of it anymore, I mean, that's a different matter. So it's just a matter of trust on some of these things, and I don't think that the Humane Society has any, skin in the game, and I don't think the amount of time that occurs during the year is going to make a substantial difference in how this contract works.
It was just, that was the only thing when I read the whole agreement, does someone have to authorize the fact that the public dropped off this animal and we are responsible for the bill? Apparently not, which is okay.
Doctor, you're going to have to come to the microphone.
Actually, there's an intake form that the animal control officers will have to execute for every dog that we're responsible for. So we're going to be working with the Humane Society. There will be times that they will actually receive the dog, and then they will just have to communicate with Ed and Cindy. And there will be people that will figure out the system and work around it, just like there is with anything. But they're going to have to sign a statement indicating, that it is not their dog. And
I appreciate the intake statement, and all that. I understand the form. My concern was the fact that, someone can just bring in and say, we're responsible.
They can do that now, though.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That was my point I was going to make up. I think I agree with your point. We talked about it at length. However, right now, I believe that there's an outside kennel facility where people can just bring and drop animals off at any time of day or night with absolutely no controls. So this system isn't going to be perfect, but it's better than what exists now. There will be some attempt to make sure that this is a legitimate stray, where now that may not exist then too.
Okay. But, and I certainly have no mistrust of the Humane Society that this is going to be an issue. Further discussion?
I don't think we have a motion.
Do we have a motion to approve the contract? Motion by Thomas, supported by Rennie. Any further discussion? Herb?
Yeah, I'd like to know what we're going to do with the old facility. Are we going to be able to padlock it so that people can't just drop a dog off there and then all of a sudden, where'd this animal come from, and nobody's there to take care of it?
Put a close
So
sign
somehow
on the
we've got to be able to put some good signage there, padlock it, somehow to be able to make sure that nobody can put and drop a dog off there.
we'll work with Danny Brown
good. Thank you.
to, make sure that that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
I would hope someplace down the road we can eliminate this facility completely, because it's really nice to be able to work with the Humane Society. We appreciate what you're doing. This is just another sign of how Grand Traverse County and its residents and its organizations work together collaborative to solve a problem. Thank you.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Is the sheriff watching on TV? I thought I seen him here earlier.
I think Dave just has an update on the jail.
Or David, do you have the?
Yes, I do. I've been in discussions with the sheriff and with the circuit judge, chief circuit judge and the chief district judge. We are down now, we had been as high as 34 inmates at one point. We are now down to 6, at least the last check, which was yesterday, we were down to 6. And the judges and the sheriff and myself are going to be meeting. We were going to meet tomorrow morning, but sheriff couldn't do it, and neither could Captain Hall, so we're going to meet next week. We are working diligently to manage the jail population, and one of the things that we found out in the process was that the standing court order that had been issued quite a few years ago had expired in 2012. So, and at issue for us is that we've got a portable classroom work release area that is part of our design rated capacity for the jail. In other words, our maximum is 194 beds, which includes 26 beds that are actually outside of the physical space of the jail. We are not allowed to put any any prisoners or inmates into that, only work release people can go there. Minimum security people can't be housed there, period. So we are kind of in a catch-22. You've got 194 beds. You're not overcrowded until you exceed 194 beds. Well, we're at 189. We got 30 people out, boarded out, and there's no overcrowding yet. So we've got to really address that, and I'm going to be talking with our judges and the sheriff about that
In the
next week.
new agreement, we'll have a lower bed count.
But yeah, I'm going to ask them about issuing a
I don't
different
know.
court order.
I hate to see us give up those 26 beds that we may want back. You know, that's the problem. If you ask the Department of Corrections to recertify our number of beds and you don't include those 26 beds, we could get to a situation again where we have work-release prisoners that we would like to put there. We currently have a licensed facility, and we will never get licensed again. I'm pretty sure of that.
Well, you know, work release is an alternative to jail that is the same as and no different than tether, alcohol tethers, and they have all kinds of very sophisticated tethers now. Home arrest, they have to stay at home and call in at certain times a day and make sure that they're there and establish their presence.
One of the things that we if I remember back, I think we closed the work-release facility, October, November, Dean?
Something like that.
Something like that. I think at that point, if I remember the numbers right, we only had 9 people staying out there. And the problem is even though we close it completely during the daylight shifts while people are out to work, it still takes like 4.2 officers to man that facility, and we only had 9 prisoners out there. So by moving those 9 prisoners into the jail, we had 4 more officers in the jail, which helps our, if everything else,
Overtime.
it gets rid of our overtime problem that we have, or not get rid of it, but it helps our overtime problem. We can go back for as many years as I've been here, and we've never got our overtime budget for corrections under control. It's always been
I sense a firm commitment by the judges and the sheriff to address the issues and get it managed. So that's the most important part to me, is that everybody's willing to cooperate, and put their heads into it and get it solved.
Well, go ahead, Larry, and then I'll add.
I just want to bring you current. When Dave and I went over and looked at the work release facility, just for his knowledge, I guess, of what it was and where we're at with that building, about a month ago or so ago, Bob Hall indicated to us when he did the tour that he's basically put the Department of Corrections on notice that we're temporarily closing the use of the facility, but we do not want to terminate the use of the facility. So he feels pretty comfortable that, we've got that covered by the Department of Corrections, but when they come in for their next audit of the jail, I'm sure we'll deal with it again at that point in time. The other thing is that, I think, that based on my discussions with the sheriff, that he understands that he does not have a line item for outboarding, and that, but on his behalf, he was not here when we set up that agreement with the courts, and exactly how this was supposed to be stipulated, and he had never been in an overcrowding situation since he had been sheriff, and thought it was appropriate to outboard, and so in any event, that whole thing has been taken care of, and I feel pretty good that the sheriff's going to work well again with the courts on reestablishing this agreement. So when they do come to a certain number within the jail population, they'll come together and take a look at the population and see if it's appropriate to release whom. And usually the history has been somebody has 2 or 3 days left and they're placed on home arrest or tether, or they got to check in or whatever. It's not a freebie. And they've just dealt with the population as we've gone forward on cases when we have been overcrowded. So I feel pretty good that, we're not going to have this issue again. Unless the judges come in and say, based on what we got in the jail, we feel uncomfortable in releasing them, we're going to have to re-look at the whole thing again, so.
I'm not quite as opposed to boarding out prisoners as Larry is. I'm a firm believer there are people that belong in jail, and if they belong in jail, they need to be in jail. If if we don't have room in our jail, then we need to figure out where we can house them and how we house them. My concerns are, I never want to get to a jail overcrowding situation where we declare a jail overcrowding, because what happens then is the judges come in and they cut everybody's sentences till you get your jail population down to 80% of capacity.
Yeah, the statute kicks in.
That's what the state law says. If you declare an emergency jail overcrowding, you cut your population to 80% and you just start letting people out the door. My concern is, and it's a discussion I've had with the sheriff and I've had with the judges, the way we've handled this, back a couple years ago when we had all the overcrowding and the way we're handling it now, our judges come in and they say, okay, we're going to take 9 days off from this guy's sentence and we're going to take 8 days off from that guy's sentence. Well, they probably already have 15 to 20 days that they've gotten off for good behavior, so they're getting out a month earlier than they were supposed to. But more importantly is that the community doesn't have an opportunity to know that these people are being released back out on the streets. There's nothing says that, okay, I'm releasing, 5 people on Monday that are in jail for drunk driving. I'm releasing 4 more that are in jail for domestic violence. Those people are going to be released out onto the street. And by the fact that we do not notify the public of the fact that these people are being released early, prior to their completing their sentence, the community does not have an opportunity to understand the fact that we have an inmate in jail to serve the community.
Well,
Go ahead.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because they are under the same information, because the judges cannot do this. They have to actually go into judges' session and amend the sentencing guidelines, or amend the sentencing deal, and the whole, whatever the situation is in open court. And so it's not done in secrecy, it's done in a public setting, just like we do it. It's like the same setting that they're sentenced. So, there is a public forum for when they do this thing. Now, my personal opinion is, if there's a short little bubble, if the judges feel comfortable in releasing someone and giving them an alternative sentence that would be not at part jail to control our population, I'm fine with it. If they feel that that is not appropriate, then they need to come back to us, and then we can allocate some cost to outboarding. And if it's something more than a budget or bubble, then I think we better start having some long-term, or some discussions on our long-term jail, and because outboarding prisoners, in my opinion, is throwing money, your investment, out the door. You're paying for somebody else's jail. If we need to expand that jail, I want to use that money to expand the jail and not pay for somebody else's jail. Because in the long run, it doesn't solve your problem unless it's a short-term bubble. If you, based on your population, need more beds for a jail of our population size, then we need to act on that. Now, according to the Department of Corrections, the general guideline is in the middle, not the low, not the high. It's 2 beds per population is the average for the state of Michigan, for all the county jails in the state of Michigan. Not the low, not the high. So if our population is 85,000, we need 170 beds, maximum. If we're going over 170 beds, then it's back to the Liebert discussion. What's occurring in your jail? Do you have, are you excessively sentencing people? Are they rotating? Do you have alternative sentencing? Do you have sentencing incarceration where they can be, depending on the crime or whatever, when someone's, do you have a situation where they can post out on weekends on bond and not spend the whole weekend and 3 days until they see a judge? All those things come into factor about how you manage the population in the jail. If we go over 170, then we need to take a hard look at how we're managing the population in the jail, because every single county in this state is able to manage their population in their jail by 2 persons per 1,000 population. And that's what we got to look at.
David?
I was just, Larry kind of hit on it. Not all the people that are in jail are having their sentences reduced in a lot of cases. In the present case, we have double the number of normal population of female inmates. We normally have about 20 in the jail, now we have about 40 in the jail, which is making the allocation of the bed space very difficult for the captain. He's got, if you've seen his wall, where he's got everybody, these people are over here, and these are mediums, and these are maximums, and it really becomes a dicey situation when you've got different types of population coming in. You've got violent offenders that, they can only sit by themselves, and then you can't put them in with a group. So there's a lot of factors that go into it, and there's a pre-sentenced population. Some people just couldn't make bond. Although, from what I understand, there's a lot of personal recognizance bonds here, already. But it's not always as simple as, we're letting bad guys out. It's that, the way we're using the jail as a tool needs to be looked at and needs to be understood, and the judges are, they understand that. They're ready to talk, and they're ready to look at it, see what they can do to manage it. I think it just hasn't been an issue for a long time, so it's time to talk about it one more time.
I supported Mr. Cooney for county prosecutor and Tom Bensley for sheriff for a reason, and that is because I believed and still believe that they support a safe community, a safe Grand Traverse County. And if we have to put inmates in other jails at times, I'm fine with that. Let's budget for it. It's certainly much more cost-effective than building an entirely new jail. Just because we happen to hit these bumps every now and then. And that's basically all I have.
The last time we were in an overcrowding situation was probably 2008, 2009?
Yeah.
No, probably 2006. It's been quite a while.
2006, 2007. But the point was, we put together a large blue ribbon jail committee at that time. Through a multitude of different formulas, that jail committee unanimously came up to the idea we need 300 beds. To meet the needs till 2025, we need 300 beds. That 300 beds cost $35 million. That's in 2006, 2007 money, not today's money. But we don't know where there's certainly not $35 million in our general fund money. And my big concern when we do this weaning them out of the jail, is that the community doesn't understand our problem. The 2 years I was board chairman, I talked to the Record Eagle continuously about our jail overcrowding, and I was regularly told, that's old news, we don't print old news. But the fact was, every week we were letting people out of the jail because we didn't have space. Some of you may remember the night at East Bay Township when I made the motion that we move to Lafreniere and build a new jail, and I was told to withdraw the motion and cool my heels. Well, I was sufficiently cooled, but I never really got over the idea that we got screwed out of a whole lot of other things. But the fact is, this community needs a new jail. We need a new jail because we need capacity and we need infrastructure. We've added on to this, the jail we have has got 4 different additions in it, but the infrastructure, the main part of the jail is still the same. We've got those 2 16-bed pods, one of which we've always figured that took care of our female population. Well, now, we have 41 beds, which was the last addition with the area that was vacated by the Sheriff's Department and the City Police. There's 41 beds in that area. That's 100% full of women right now. And we've never had to deal with that kind of population. And, we have truly no provision to deal with the number of women that we're dealing with and we have no provision for special needs prisoners. And you know, if you're going to talk about building a new jail, I guarantee you build a jail that you can take females and you can take special needs prisoners. They'll bring them from all over the state of Michigan, because there's nobody that can handle both female prisoners and special needs prisoners. Nobody has the facilities to handle it. Chris?
You know, and another thing I wanted to add, I've been in the courtroom, as I know other commissioners have, watching the specialty courts. You know, I think the judges are doing what they can with the people that are coming up in front of them. The other question, and this is a question, at the last meeting, I heard from other commissioners that in 2006 we passed a resolution saying that we were not going to house prisoners in other jails. I was on the commission in 2006, and I have to tell you, I can't imagine in my wildest dreams that I voted for that. But, I mean, I don't remember passing.
It was part of the discussion when we did the expansion, that we agreed to temporarily outboard prisoners while the expansion was going on, and then after the expansion was completed, you know, on the administrative side of the jail, that we were going to utilize that space and not outboard prisoners. And then we worked out a situation with the court that we really never ended up utilizing, because the expansion took care of our problem.
The day we opened the 41 beds, we had 34 prisoners boarded out, if my memory is correct. We were full when they came back. You know, but it is a hassle. Boarding out prisoners is absolutely a hassle. You know,
But if we have to do it, we have to do it.
I don't know where we're at right now. I think last week we had 10 in Leelanau, 10 in Charlevoix.
But I think
We have six as of yesterday.
it's my opinion that it's not our call, it's not the sheriff's call, it is the judge's call.
Well, that's true.
The judges do the sentencing, and if the judges feel it's appropriate to amend someone's sentencing, then they have the authority to do it. It's not our call, it's not the sheriff's call, it's the judge's call.
But I don't want...
And if the judge's call is to outboard, then they need to come in and talk to us.
But it's not our place to tell the judge that we don't have a bed available for him either.
That's right.
You know, I don't want to get to a situation, you know, all the judge cares is he's got a bed available for the prisoner that he's standing before. He should not have to worry about whether or not there is a bed available for the guy that's standing before him that he wants to send to jail.
I agree.
But I will argue the point that we need to, at that point, you need to go in and examine what's going on in the jail, the population you have in the jail. Are we appropriately managing that population in that jail, and are we using all the alternatives available to the court that they can use? So, including pre-sentencing. So, I mean, those are all the factors that every single county and every state uses to manage their population based on their bed count, based on their population.
You know, and we can have...
I'm just telling you that it's not a carte
discussion about
blanche.
this. But the point, the other point is, we have to remember, Grand Traverse County and through our circuit and our district courts, we have domestic violence courts, we have alternative, we have drug court,
Mental health
court, we have a veterans court. You know, we take the people that probably do not belong in jail because of other issues, we take them out before they ever get to the jail through the alternative sentencing and through the alternative court system. The people that get to Phil Rogers to be sentenced, those people need to go to jail, period. You know, if they're found guilty, you know, I've said for years, jail population is a matter of philosophy. The philosophy in my community is if you commit a crime here, your ass goes to jail. The philosophy of our judges is if the sheriff arrests them, the prosecutor charges them, a jury of their peers finds them guilty, they need to go to jail. You know, we can have all kinds of discussions about the community corrections. You know, I'm a big supporter of community corrections. So I don't believe that the community particularly cares that that person is sentenced to 30 days in the county jail and then is mandated into a 6-month drug and rehabilitation program. I don't think they care about that, but they absolutely believe there has to be a punitive portion. And that's why we have to maintain jail beds available. Dick?
Well, one thing that nobody's mentioned yet is the fact that our jail, being as old as it is very labor intensive. And if we had a new pod-style jail, and we talked about this years ago, and we should have built it then if we could have,
I made the
because it would have been a lot cheaper.
I made
He
the
did.
motion.
But the thing is, they can operate with half the personnel that they've got now, because, just because covered.
I don't know if that's true.
That's a lot. It's pretty close.
That's not half.
It's pretty close, though. I mean, you're spending over $5 million on the jail now.
Well,
And,
Yeah.
and I can tell you for a fact that, you know, a 250-bed jail costs less than that annually, with the debt service. I know, because I built one,
A modern jail.
a modern jail. Takes
That
27
takes in
officers to run those
prisoners
pods.
from other areas.
Well, I think we can have this discussion if this is not a bubble. I mean, if this is an ongoing trend, then we need to come back, part of our
Well,
discussion about, you know, how we're going to deal with the population of jail if this is not a bubble. And
this
if
is the
we're-
judge's tool.
It is.
It is the judge's tool, and they, you know, they need the information in order to make the decision. They don't have that information right now. They haven't had to worry about it in a long time. We haven't had a situation where, you know, they're all ruling separately from the bench, and then until somebody says to them, "Oh, we're overcrowded," they don't know. They don't know what, you know, they don't know who's in there, why they're in, you know, they know that over a period of time, they've been sentencing people, but they don't know what the cumulative effect of that. They don't know how many came walking in the front door yesterday, and how many are, you know, waiting for trial, and how many are, they don't know any of that, those facts. So my intent in our next meeting with the judges is to kind of establish the process for how they get that information and be on top of that so that they can manage the jail population. And if they can't, you know, if they got guys that need to be in there, that's their decision. That's their tool. And if they say, hey, it's not big enough, then we got to start talking about finding money for renting beds, and if it's really a serious chronic problem, then we have to start talking about finding money to build a new jail.
You know, and you know, I find myself a little bit at fault because I read those jail stats regularly when Don Sheehan forms them to me. I forgot the fact that we closed those 26 beds. You know, and I knew we were in the upper 160s, and it never even dawned on me that we had closed those 26 beds in the Outback.
Yeah.
I call it the Outback, nobody else does.
That's the steakhouse.
Okay.
Just to correct you, Larry, we're not at 85,000, we're at 90,000. So that means we need 180.
And we're looking at the last census was 85,000.
Since the last census, we're up to 190,000.
Yeah, but how do you know that unless you do another census?
Excuse me, I mean 90,000.
How do you know that unless you do another census?
Because that's what the last
You can't,
report came out.
It was impossible to do
But
that
anyway,
report.
the other thing I would think is that we also need to start looking at whether or not we should be doing a regional jail. You know, that to me makes more sense than us trying to figure out how to build the jail for ourselves.
the only trouble with that is
I know.
We've been through that
transportation costs
I know.
are, we looked at that years ago.
Who's going to be the boss?
Question for Dave. You mentioned 41 female prisoners. Is this a trend that will continue, more females?
It's been a trend for a few years, not in Grand Traverse County to this extent, but more and more female inmates has been a theme that's been going on throughout the state and probably throughout the country.
So we would have to address this in our jail at some point in time if
Yes.
this continues, this trend.
Always
Yes.
frightens me when I
They
agree
go
with you.
here, the guys in the new jail.
More bad girls.
We're not, I'm pretty confident we're not going to solve our issues in our discussion with jail populations this evening. So, do you have anything else on that subject you want to add, Dave?
No, I don't.
Just that the Red Wings are playing
Thank you.
tonight.
What time is that game? Come on, Dickie.
I don't-
Okay, finance. Dean?
I'm going to be brief here, but I've got your general fund dated March 31st. If you look at page 68, you're probably asking, okay, why are we operating with a cash deficit in this fund? Two reasons. Our main revenue source doesn't start coming in until July 1st. That's the tax revenue. But this fund is supported by other funds that have a positive cash balance, and the main support, or the cash that we're using, is our cash in our tax revolving fund to pay the bills and cover payroll. This is a pretty common situation in our general fund for the last 3 months of the first half of our fiscal year to be in a deficit cash position. We're using cash flow from other funds to operate.
Dean, I have a question on that.
Go ahead.
Is that also, we make the townships whole when the taxes come in? And doesn't that affect some of our cash flow, and isn't that now coming to that point where we may not be able to continue that?
That's out of the tax.
We just purchased, earlier this month, the treasurer purchased the delinquent taxes from all of the local units, considerably smaller amount this year versus prior years. The delinquent tax, or the tax revolving fund had a cash balance of $10 million at the end of March, which is shoring up this operation. But in talking with the treasurer, the purchase was, I believe, almost $2 million lower than a year ago. If you recall, there have been years where the former treasurer would come and say, we may need to borrow. Obviously, we didn't need to do that, or we didn't even have that discussion. So the situation with the purchase of delinquent taxes has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. So we're in pretty good shape in that fund as well.
Thank you.
Just a brief comment on the revenues. Most of the differences that you see on page 69 are timing versus when we're doing either rent invoices or when I'm recording transfers. The positive variances that I wanted to show here, the tax revenue. The Board of Review and Michigan Tax Tribunal refunds that we make have finally really slowed down. In fact, is the reason for the increase in tax revenue is because of the increased personal property tax collections that we've experienced in the first 3 months, and also the fact that we did not have any significant Board of Review or Michigan Tax Tribunal refunds. A year ago, we had almost $27,000 in refunds, which was why there was little tax revenue. The other reason you don't have any significant tax revenue is because we're not collecting, the main county levy until July 1st. But charges for services, if you look at that classification or category as well, just another sign that indicates that the revenue side of our budget has improved versus what it has been the last 2 years. There are no variances at this point in time in the general fund that I'm concerned with, and that's followed on the next page, on page 70, when you look at year-to-date expenditures compared to the prior year. We only have about a $17,000 increase. Everything is within budget, and the fact that we're so comparable is the first comment. We're at full staffing for most of our departments in the current year compared to last year, where we had a number of vacancies in some of our sheriff's departments, patrol and corrections. So, but no variances. The other items here are all timing. They correct themselves based on when we record or invoice for things in our general fund activity. So unless there are any questions, the next item I have are some budget adjustments that we should make to keep our budget in line with actual revenues that have been received. The second one on page 72, we did not budget the full amount of the allowable transfer from the revenue sharing reserve fund. It was $44,000 higher than we budgeted because we basically appropriated or included the same amount as we had received in 2012. So those dollars flow back to our general fund. And that's it, unless anyone has a question.
Motion to approve the budget adjustments as presented.
Second. Motion by Inman, supported by Rennie. Further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the next item is one that I had put on the agenda under new business. There's no unfinished business, I believe. And there's a little write-up in here, and I just want to put it in just kind of an easy sense of understanding of the question. And that was during claims and accounts, or otherwise known as the audit committee. Commissioner Maxbauer had noticed that there were staff and/or elected officials that served on various boards and commissions that were assigned by the Board of Commissioners. Some were receiving per diems and some were not. Some voluntarily decided not to accept them if they qualified. So I went back with Dean and Chris Kramer, did some checking about the various boards that that would be applicable to. And a lot of the governing documents say that the per diem is payable to everyone that sits on those boards and commissions if it's approved by the Board of Commissioners. So then we went back and we looked for a resolution that actually stated that the Board of Commissioners actually at some point in time approved the appropriation for per diem for them to submit, and we could not find that document. So I'm coming before you today to get clarification or some direction on behalf of the Claims and Audit Committee, that the simple question is, if we have, is a philosophy, if we have a staff member, or if we have a department head, or if we have an elected official that is either statutorily assigned to a board or commission or is appointed by us to serve on that board and commission, the answer really is, should they be allowed to submit a per diem, or shouldn't they, if they're staff or an elected official other than the Board of Commissioners? And we're not talking about citizens off the street that sit on boards and commissions, and if some collect and some don't. We're just looking at staff members, department heads, and elected officials. Chris?
Well, what brought my attention to this is I had a conversation with the drain commissioner, and I said, well, we were talking about per diems, and he said, well, I don't get per diems. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, I just don't get them. And I said, but you're entitled to them. And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, that makes no sense to me, because I've seen Linda Coburn's submissions as county clerk. I said, I've seen Bill Rokas's submissions as treasurer. And I said, in my opinion, that's not fair. And I don't think it's fair. I think everybody ought to be treated the same. And so that's how this whole conversation started. And I still don't think it's fair. I think that if we are allowing the county clerk, who makes a very fair salary, along with benefits, to collect per diem, then, and the treasurer, then by George, the drain commissioner ought to get it too. To me, it's just a simple act of fairness.
Can we do something with per diems in the midterm, or we would have to wait?
Not for the county commission.
I mean, for elected officials.
Yeah, because that's not part of the resolution on their compensation.
I'm not sure.
You know, we'd have to look into that.
I would think we'd have to look into that.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. We would have to look into that. One thing I will say, though, is that if there's a statute that says, for example, the clerk shall attend a meeting, our opinion is that there should not be a per diem for that, because it's statutorily mandated that they attend a meeting. Per diem should only come in when they're not required by statute or other law to attend a meeting. The clerk attending a building authority meeting is an example of that. Building authority doesn't say a clerk shall attend that meeting. But as far as the issue of changing per diem or providing per diem midterm, we'll have to look into that and report back to the board.
You know, my general knowledge of this says that you can't increase your own compensation during the term of your office as a commissioner.
You can't decrease
And for
it.
the other elected officials, you can't reduce their
Right.
compensation during the term of their office.
So, because personally, I'd just soon not see per diems for any of them. If you're an elected official, you got a salary, you get benefits, and that's the way it is. Yeah, but I don't think we can reduce that at this point, personally.
I think we can increase it, but not decrease it.
I agree, yeah.
Well, then I think we need to, in my opinion, address the salary of the drain commissioner. But I understand that that probably would not be a discussion for today. We would want that on a future agenda.
I guess basically what I'm hearing right now is if we have listed what we think are the boards that an elected official or department head would serve on in the memo. If we could get just a quick opinion from Chris.
Right.
If it's allowable or not allowable, I guess that would just solve the issue for us for now.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to put that together and report at the next board meeting.
Is that fine?
Do we think we'll have that next week, or do we want to hold that?
We can have that another month from now, that's fine.
I think this would be
We've been doing this all along.
My guess this would be an RM&A agenda item.
Yeah.
So I would ask that we put this question of per diem for elected officials on the May RM&A.
And department heads.
I think we have to rely upon whether or not they can put it in their time budget. You know, we've asked them to do a tremendous amount.
There's no hurry on this because we've been doing it for years.
Yeah, I just
a
think
clarification
that
question.
if you can find, if you can't, we're not going to force you to hurry up and get this stuff.
My point was, I don't want to push them to try to have an answer for us next week.
Right,
you know,
right.
You know,
But I mean, it
we're
could be
3
2 or
weeks
3 months
We're
before
3
they
weeks
get
from
to
the
it.
RMA meeting.
It could be whenever you're,
Right.
We'll do it for
whenever
the
you
next
can do it.
R&M meeting.
Whatever.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Is that it, Larry? Okay, this brings us to the second opportunity for public comment. Is there anyone in the public wishing to make comment at this time? Seeing none, we will move forward to...
You don't want to talk about potholes?
He doesn't, yeah, I think he's
How about
done that several times
Hoosier
today
Valley?
already. Let's move forward with the Commissioner Committee reports.
I did attend the TC Talus, and they handed out different maps on the different construction projects that are going to be going on this summer. They do have plenty of them. So there is 2013 Paving the Way road repair projects for all of Michigan and Grand Traverse County. So there's lots of things going on. There's also the city of Traverse City, and there's also an M37 in Wexford County, which is the old Sherman Hill, and that is closed down as of now, and there is a detour. And so they got the big boys and their big toys playing in the sandbox, pushing sand around up there to be able to get that done. So there is about a 5-minute detour going around that. And then when that's finished in the end of June, they're also going to be making another detour, and they're going to be putting in a roundabout at the corner of 115 and 37. So that will be a construction that will start this fall and be able to put that in. So there is a phone app that you can go in and look at what are construction projects going on any place in the state of Michigan that MDOT has. So these maps are available from MDOT, and you know, rather interesting. If you're going to be making going someplace, check out the orange barrel season. It's upon us.
I was telling Jim earlier this afternoon, I hit a pothole, and it was just as smooth as it could be. It was the roof of another car.
I saw somebody water skiing in one of the potholes.
I saw pictures of the bombing of Baghdad roads, and I looked at our roads, and I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, well.
Jim,
As long as you're going to be...
I apologize for your getting beat up repeatedly this evening.
I will always tell you my story at this time. This is what we're paying for because we're not putting enough money in our roads. We are going to continue to have these kind of road problems unless we figure out how we're going to fund our roads. Whether or not we do it locally, I don't think the state's going to help us, and I don't think the federal government's going to help us. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to provide more roads for our road commission, maybe with a road millage for snow plowing, to be able to help them to have more money to be able to take care of the roads when they get done with it. So
Just take the sales tax off gas and put it into the road.
I don't think the state's willing to do that.
Well,
So But I'm just saying, it's all has to do with money.
I think the governor's willing to do it, it's just passing it through the legislature.
Is there other commissioners' comments?
No.
Charlie?
Yeah, real quickly, I have a couple committees I went to, I'll just give you one. Pugsley Correctional Facility Quarterly Board, April 4th. They still have an average inmate count of approximately 1,330 per day, of which over 300 suffer from mental health issues. Big problem at these jails, this mental health thing coming down the road. The big issue that day, of course, was they had broke a contraband ring the day before, and that's all they could talk about. Apparently, there were some outsiders that were dropping packages at fence lines that certain trusted inmates could access.
Now, we have them in our jail.
And the
People that were
contraband was
dropping it off.
primarily...
Yeah, dropping it off, right. And that's part of the female jail population.
Could be. The contraband was marijuana and tobacco. That's basically what's going on there. Another issue, the officers down there have been issued tasers. They're very happy with them. They've had to, only one incident where they had to use one, and that apparently was a good lesson for the rest of them. The prison officials feel control and safety at the facility has been dramatically improved with the taser issuance. That's all I have.
Chris, you thought you left a big city for a calmer community.
Dave, would you tell Danny Brown that that desk is about to fall apart?
I will.
That leg is out about
I think
an inch
that's
and a half, and this one's out quite a bit.
And the
I'd
centerpiece
hate
is
to have it
crossing
fall on
right
somebody's
there.
Needs a
feet.
rubber hammer, huh?
I don't have a committee report, but I would just like to thank everyone who sent cards and their well wishes to my husband's family on the passing of my father-in-law.
Go ahead.
We have an invitation from Tree Sternum for the WOMP invitation to go out and celebrate the MEP, whatever it is, I can't remember, to their farm assist in their program. It's the Wineries of Omission MAEAP celebration. It'll be at the Bryce Estate on Friday, April 26th. You also have
Island, Florida.
Chris and I now have, Chris hasn't picked hers up, but I have my new iPad.
Well, I'm using ITs. I'll trade them when I
Yeah,
get
right.
one tomorrow.
So I've used that for this meeting,
I
and
have
it's
too.
rather interesting.
Did you notice?
To see the process. So then when Chris from the IT department gets back, he's going to be at a conference. When he gets back, he will have a couple more available, and so each of you will be getting them as he makes them available to us to be able to get them ready, so.
Now, I would like it noted
I
that
can
I
hardly
sat here
wait.
without paper, but Commissioner Lemko
Well,
was.
it came to me, so I brought it just in case I could
I
have to
know,
fall
the
back.
first few times I used mine, I did the same thing. I had the paper backup right there.
Yeah. So, and then also, Dave Benda and I are meeting with the tribe, and we're also going to be meeting with the mayor and the city manager coming up in our meeting, so talking about different issues, so.
I guess as long as we've moved to announcements, I would announce that the Grand Traverse County brush drop-off site on Keystone Road is now open for the season. We were hoping to be open a couple weeks ago, but the weather wasn't real conducive. We probably could have got the gate open, but we probably couldn't have got the stuck cars out of there after they dropped off the brush that they were bringing.
Right.
So, but it is currently open. Check the website for the hours of operation. I did not write them down, so I don't know what it was off the top of my head.
It's on the Recycle Smart
On the
newsletter.
Recycle Smart newsletter and on the Resource Recovery's website.
Yeah.
Is there any other notices or announcements? There's no need for a closed session? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Away.